Hey YouTubers, welcome back to Sam's Creative Toolbox. Today I will talk about part 2, chalkboard animation. I will show you some more advanced stuff, creating complicated elements, animating videos, and also creating a custom shape from any logo you want. So like always, let's meet in After Effects and have some fun. Okay guys, once again, welcome back to After Effects. If you watched this video right now, I hope that you have watched part 1. If not, go back and watch it. It's very important that you understand the basics before we now move on to some more advanced, stuff. So, like I said in part 1, this time I will show you some very cool custom shapes. The first one I will show you is this banner right here. So as I said in the first video, it's very important that you just go on the internet and find some inspiration. Look for banners, speech bubbles, arrows. There are so many shapes out there. So just if you find some cool thing, just save the image and drag it into After Effects like I do it right now. If you don't want to copy something from the internet, you can also be super creative and draw it on your own. If you can't draw actually, just maybe ask your little brother, little sister, or go to local art school, I don't know. Just get some nice looking shapes as a background and then just click and drag them into your comp. Okay, because this image will now act as our reference for our path. So as I said before, we now want to create a new solid. Let's call that banner, for example. Click OK. And of course now we see nothing because the solid is, it's just fully opaque. But we can now easily just click and drag that below our banner example. But if we keep this layer selected, we can now draw mask on our white solid. So let's delete the mask for the moment and zoom in a bit. Because now we want to think about how we would draw this banner in real life with our hands. So just think about for yourself, or if you have the time, just take a sheet of paper and a pencil and try out for yourself how you would actually draw this kind of banner. So I would start maybe in this corner right here and try or draw something like that right here. Then maybe the top line, then close these side things, and finally I want to create the shadows. But like I said, that's the way how I would draw it. If you would draw it differently, then I would recommend to use your own style. So before we now can start drawing, I will tell you one more important thing, and that is that you split up your mask into several parts. So for example, I would do one mask for this path until I reach this point. Then I will make one mask for this line, one for this line, then one for the top line, and then finally for the left corner and for the shadows. So the reason for that is that when I would draw a banner like that, I would definitely pause my drawing once in a while to kind of restart from a new point or from a new angle. And you want to do the same with your masks, because later on we can use the stroke modifier to kind of sequentially redraw the line, so that After Effects starts with your mask number 1 and finishes with your last mask. Okay, so now let's zoom in and start to recreate this custom shape right here. By the way, I hope that you are used to working with the path tool. If you are not, I would recommend that you maybe watch a tutorial on YouTube. There are plenty of great tutorials out there, for example from Clint Hughes. It's for Photoshop actually, but working with path is always the same. I will now skip that part to save some time or make a time lapse, I don't know, so see you again in a couple of seconds. Okay guys, welcome back, and as you can see, I have created several masks, so 7 masks in total. I also changed the color to make it easier for you to distinguish between each different mask. So, by the way, if you want to change the color for a mask, just click on this colored icon right here and then choose any color you want. I often do that if the background is maybe a bit too bright for yellow or so, or if I, like in this case, want to know which masks belong to which part. It just makes a bit more, it just makes a project more tidier, I think, a bit more clean. So let's zoom in a bit, and yeah, as I said before, I have created several masks. So the first mask, like I said, is this yellow one, going from the top left, the bottom left corner, all the way to this point right here. But I will show you that now with the stroke effect. So for the moment, let's close our banner, and let's make our banner example invisible. Okay, so once again, we only see white except for these colored masks, by the way. And now we want to apply an effect, which you know from the first tutorial, which is called stroke. Stroke. And just apply this effect to our solid. And like before, you want to change the paint style to reveal original image. And then, let's make the video frame invisible. Okay. And now let's choose path and all masks, and also stroke sequentially. Because as I said before, if I enable this checkbox, After Effects will start with mask number 1 and end in this case with mask number 7. Of course, if you aren't happy with the order of these masks, you can also just rename them or just click and drag them and move them around in your order right here. So after that, I now want to increase my brush size to, let's say, maybe 10 or let's say 8 for example. And if we now go to our start and end modifier again, we can see that After Effects now starts with mask number 1, which is the green line. And then follows mask number 2, 3, 4, and so on. If you would uncheck this stroke sequentially, you would animate everything simultaneously. And I think that this doesn't look realistic at all. So I always check this stroke sequentially checkbox. And with that, my banner looks great. So like before, let's make it 0. Go to the beginning of your animation, click the stopwatch, move forward for about 2 seconds. And now let's bring it back to 100. And now we want to create those shadows right here. And for that, I want to create a second solid. So once again, layer, new, and solid. Let's call that, for example, banner shadows. Click OK. And now again, we don't see anything, so drag it beneath our banner solid. Of course, we can now delete our banner example image because we don't need it anymore. Okay, and for the shadows, for example, let's bring the opacity down to, just bring it down to 40%. And now again, select your pen tool, zoom in a bit, and now just recreate just those edges. But this time we want to create a closed mask, so something like that, and also the same thing for the opposite side. Okay, you don't have to be super exact because we have these outlines around it. Just try to get quite a size or the shape of this edge right here. Okay, so then zoom out again. Let's bring the opacity back to 100 and apply this effect called scribble. You also know it from part 1. And click and drag this effect on top of our banner shadows layer. Okay. And this time, instead of using single mask, you want to check all masks. And if you now see, we have these shadows in our edges right here. And as before, you can now mess around with the opacity. You can mess around with the stroke width. You can also play around with the stroke options, so the spacing. So all in all, that's basically how to create or how you can create banners. Of course, you should now also apply the roughen edges effect to your banner. So just click, drag, and apply the same settings as I showed you in the previous tutorial. Oh, sorry, that's a bit too much. So bring it down to 3 or so, or even 1, or even 1.5. It's really about finding the perfect spot. So I think maybe that looks good, and also just the same effect for our outlines. So complexity again to 10, and the border maybe to 9.5 or so. Okay, and if you now go back to our animation and... Oh, sorry, I forgot to animate the scribble as well. So once again, click the solid for banner shadows. Go to scribble. Let's move forward for about 2 seconds. So when our outline animation is finished, then click the stopwatch for end. Bring it back all the way down to 0. Then let's say the shadow's only 1 second. So go to 3 seconds in your timeline and let's bring it back to 100. And if you now hit 0 on your keyboard to make a short RAM preview, let's just wait a couple of seconds. We can now see that we have a nice animated banner right here. And of course, for the scribble effect, you also have this fill path sequentially. So if you want your path or your scribble shadows to appear at the same time, just uncheck it. If not, just check it to make first the mask number 1 and then the mask number 2. So yeah, that's it for creating banners. Of course, you can use the same techniques for basically any shape you want. You can also create those kind of vintage logos. Just use something as a preview, like my banner JPEG, and then just use the path tool to recreate any shape and use Scribble to fill in the shadows. Okay, so the second thing I want to show you is how to animate in a video. So let's scale that up a bit. Okay, and now let's also bring in an image from my footage folder. So I go to my folder and just click and drag this image into After Effects. Okay, and now what I always like to do is, instead of now dragging this image in my comp, I will create a comp for my video. So call it video, or in my case it's image number 1, size HD, same settings as your main comp. Click OK. And now I drag my image inside that comp, because then if I apply any changes to my image comp, it doesn't affect my paintballs. If I want to replace the image later, it's much more easier. Of course, let's bring it down because it's also super resolution. So yeah, maybe something like that. Okay, and now go back to my construction comp. And as I said, just click and drag this comp into the construction comp. Beneath our video frame, let's also scale that one down to kind of fit the frame of our dashes right here. So maybe something like that. Also rotate it a bit. Okay. Of course, it doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes I find it cool if the video is a bit offset in comparison to the video frame, because as I said, we try to recreate some hand-drawn effects right here. After that, I want to apply the roughen edges effect as well to our video. But before that, I just make sure to select my rectangle tool, select my image, and then just double click to create a mask outside the outline of my video. And then just open up the mask and bring down the mask expansion to kind of make the image a bit smaller. Okay. And after that, I apply the roughen edges effect. And yeah, settings same as before, 10 for complexity. And now border, you can really use super high values. So maybe, let's say something around 45 in this case. Okay. And if you now want to create animation, for example, like you would actually draw this image, like I use my mouse right here. So just as a paintbrush, you can deselect any layer, very important guys. And then once again select your pen tool and then just create some custom shape right here. Okay. Then hit U 2 times to open up the settings. Like always, fill invisible. And now you want to increase the stroke width until you can't see anything from your video. So in my case, it's something like that. Of course, you want to now enable the round cap as well. Okay, let's go up and close that. And of course, rename this to image matte. Okay, and now again, apply the roughen edges effect. And again, super high values. So the border, I would use maybe something like 170. But this time I also want to mess around with the sharpness because I want some blurry edges right here. Okay. And now let's go back to our image mat, hit U again 2 times, go to add, and again to trim path because we now want to animate in these lines right here. So once again, click on the end stopwatch, bring it back to 0, move forward for about, I always choose 2 seconds now for this series, but like I always say, you can choose any length you want depending on how fast you want your animation to be. And yeah, now let's just bring it back up to 100. And what we get is, a nice drawn line, nothing special. So now hit U to close the settings. And now let's click and drag this image mat on top of our image comp. And if you now go to track mat and choose alpha mat, you can see that our image is now, gone in the beginning. And as our image mat is kind of drawing into our comp, so is our video. So yeah, you can use that to kind of, like I said, create this brushed in animation. Of course, the border here isn't perfect. It looks a bit unrealistic, but I think you know what I mean and you know the technique. So it's up on you to find the perfect values for your personal taste. So that's basically everything you need to animate in your videos. I will now also show you a very cool trick how to kind of erase your video or any object you want, because if you will think about drawing on a chalkboard, if you don't like something, you take something like a cloth and then just rub it away, just erase it. And I will now show you a very cool technique in how to do that. So after you've created or finalized your image or video animation, you can now select the video frame, your track mat and your image, then go to layer, pre-compose. Again, call it, for example, image number 1. Okay. And now we want to again deselect all layers and again create something like before, so just a very custom shape. It's just a bit bigger than before because this time we also want to erase our outline right here. So again, U 2 times, fill invisible, stroke width, super high value. Again, select the round caps for both lines. Hit U and again roughen edges. So you see guys, it's basically always the same effects, just used in kind of different way. So it isn't that really difficult, it's just you have to know how to do it. Okay, so once again go to the beginning, go to add and go to trim, sorry, not twist, I want to have trim path. So let's say our video is fading in about 2 seconds, then we want to see it for 2 seconds, and then we want to see that it's gone. So just go to 4 seconds in my timeline, and like before, just click the end stopwatch, move forward for about 2 seconds, and bring it again back to 100. Then again hit U to close the settings. Let's call that, just call it matte for example. So as you can see, like before, we now have this drawing in line. Just to stay organized, I will also trim my mat and make it start at 4 seconds. Okay. Then I want to duplicate my image right here. So just hit Ctrl D or go to Edit and Duplicate. And now let's make the first one invisible and select the second one right here. And also trim that to 4 seconds so that it just starts with our mat right here. Then you want to apply an effect which is called Directional Blur. Just click and drag it on top of our image and also hit Ctrl D to duplicate this effect 1 time. So the first direction, let's set it for example to 40 degrees. And let's choose a high value of, let's say about 300. Okay, maybe about 350. And then the second value, just make it the opposite. So it's minus 40, for example, and the value of, let's say 100. Then you want to select your bottom image layer again, hit T for opacity, and change it maybe to 50, for example. Okay. You can also, if you want, apply an effect called saturation, so that it just takes out the color a tiny bit. So maybe just something like that. So before and after. Okay, and then finally you want to duplicate your matte right here and just take the matte number 2 on top of our bottom image. So let's call that, for example, image number 1 blur, and everything else can stay the same. Okay, so now let's bring back our image number 1. Okay, as we can see, it's animating in. Okay, stays for 2 seconds. And then we want to select the track matte again. By the way, many people ask me that they don't see the track mattes, and the reason is that they don't or see the different menu. So just click this toggle switch mode to switch between this 3D and motion blur mode to this track matte and blending mode interface. So then select track matte and choose alpha inverted matte. Okay, let's make the bottom 2 layers invisible. And as you can see, our image is now fading away. Okay, and then select your image blur and your matte number 2, and then just do the opposite. So instead of inverted, I will now choose alpha matte. So as you can see, we now get this kind of brushed away look. Okay, so yeah, once again, here's our image, and then it kind of fades away in this blurred mass right here. Of course, what you can do to make this transition a bit more diffuse or a bit less visible is go back to our matte and just increase the border, for example. Also apply an effect maybe called Gaussian blur. Okay. So yeah, it really is all about finding the perfect settings, but just make a short RAM preview again. Okay guys, and now let's take a look at our final video animation. I think that really looks kinda interesting and very cool. Of course, you can really now make that perfect or as perfect as you want. For example, if you don't like this blurred mass right here, you can also reduce the opacity even more. So let's set it to 25, for example. Or let's change the blend mode, for example, to soft light, to screen. It's really all about finding the perfect settings for you. But I think for the moment, that's all you need to know to fade in and fade out your images, videos, logos, and whatever. So for the moment, let's make everything invisible. And now I come to the last part of this tutorial. It's about creating a shape from a logo or some text, for example. For that, I have my own logo right here. It's just this aperture ring. If you have a chance, try to get a PNG file with alpha channel, because let's import both images and click and drag them into our timeline. So as I said, the first image is a PNG file with alpha channel. So we have some clear edges right here. If you only have JPEG with, for example, a black or white background, you could easily apply an effect which is called color key. And then just select the white color and it's gone. Of course, the edges need some fine tuning, but I think you get the point. But as I said, if you have the chance to get a PNG file, please use that. So if you have a logo or a text layer, just go to Layer and Auto Trace. And please always make sure to check the preview window so that you can see that After Effects is now creating these masks right here. I usually just play around with the threshold, everything else I leave as default. So if you now bring the threshold up or down, you can see that After Effects creates more or less masks. So at 100 I think there's no mask at all. If you now set it back to, for example, 20 or so, there are masks for each individual shape. Then just click OK, and now After Effects has created a new solid, so let's delete our PNG file. Select our logo, call that, for example, Sam logo or so. Of course, if you're not Sam, then just call it logo. And now zoom in a bit, and sometimes you have to fine tune your image. So select your pen tool with the minus symbol, so the delete vertex tool. And now just go through your image and delete some of these points you don't really need. Like I said, depending on the file you have, you sometimes don't have to do it, sometimes you have to clean it up a lot. It really depends on your quality of your image. Yeah, that was a bit too bad, but I won't fix it now to save some time. But don't be too fancy right here, because we want to create a drawn effect. So if there are some little edges, you won't see it later, okay? So as you now press M for masks, you can see that we have a mask for each individual element of my aperture logo right here. And as we learned from previous steps, masks or path is what we want to use it with the stroke effect or with the stipple effect. So let's again apply the effect called stroke. Okay. And also paint style, reveal original image. And this time also let's check all masks and stroke sequentially. Let's bring the brush size a bit up to, for example, 12 or 13 pixels. Brush hardness to 100. And also the scribble effect. Okay, so as I said before, guys, it's always the same. It's really the same steps over and over again. Okay, and also choose on original image. And as you can now see, we have created a nice drawing from my own custom logo. Of course, like before, you now have to apply the roughen edges effect. But I think, guys, that now you should know what to do. So as I said, if you have, for example, a text layer, you can also do that. So let's call that Sam logo. So if you have a text, just right click and go to create shapes from text to create a shape layer, or create masks from text to create a solid with masks. Okay, so let's delete the text layer. And as you can now see, we have a very nice solid with many little points right here. Okay, so yeah, guys, that's basically all you need to know to create your own awesome chalkboard animations. Okay, guys, that's it about the chalkboard animation stuff in After Effects. I guess now you should know all the basics, so it's now on you to create some stunning work, some stunning shapes, create awesome animations. Like always, if you find this video helpful, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and also check out my other social media sites like Facebook or Instagram. And yeah, now let's go animating, stay creative, have fun.